We, about 2 minutes ago, received a 2-minute warning that the former president would come out and address his supporters in West Palm Beach. There you see them waiting anxiously. But, of course, the 2 minutes have come and gone. Our panel is with us. Your reaction first to you, Matt, on what you're hearing tonight.
Well, again, I think that we've known for at least an hour or so that the trends were heading in Donald Trump's direction. A number of media outlets have already called Wisconsin and Pennsylvania for the president. I know AP hasn't. I think that's going to happen tomorrow. And I think that when Kamala speaks that she will, hopefully, she should give herself a round of applause. She ran a solid campaign, but hopefully she will concede as well.
History was to be made no matter who would end up in the White House. And now we have, Donald Trump projected to be the president-elect and going to take the White House for a second time with non-consecutive terms. So very interesting on that. And, of course, the ultimate glass ceiling that we were talking about earlier, Reva, with Kamala Harris. How is everybody feeling about the campaign that she ran and about this moment here? I mean, it's 2 o'clock in the morning on the East Coast, and I know there are a lot of tired supporters and a lot of tired volunteers, it's got to be wearing on them to be this disappointed right now.
Yeah, I think everybody feels that Kamala Harris ran an exceptional campaign, that she left nothing on the field, that she gave it her all. She gave it 110%, 120%, that she was an outstanding candidate, that she made the best use of the short amount of time that she had, but she had a Herculean task, which was to run a campaign in 90-plus days against someone who had been running essentially for 4 years. The other thing we're feeling, particularly those of folks like me, civil rights lawyers, African-American folks, we're feeling like this is our worst nightmare. J.D. Vance made a comment that a racist joke, that we need to get over it. So we think about all the rights that our ancestors fought for, rights, voting rights, rights to not be discriminated against in the workplace. And it's very scary. You think about Project 2025 and the things that can be, the rights that can be eviscerated in this country under a Donald Trump and J.D. Vance are particularly scary for people of color, for people who are in marginalized communities. So I know there are lots of folks who are happy. They're going to be happy about Donald Trump's tax breaks, but there are millions of Americans who are scared to death about what a Trump presidency will mean.
Matt, how does a Trump-Vance campaign pivot when they have plans and an archetype in place to go against President Biden, and then to see that shift again 3 months out?
Well, it took them about 6 weeks to find their footing. They still didn't really know how to compete against Kamala Harris, and she did very, very well. When they announced her, I joked that originally that it was a sugar high, but she met the moment. She had a strong convention. She came out of it with some momentum, but then Donald Trump adapted his strategy, and I think that his message of he got white men to vote for him, and he got men in general to vote for him. The gender gap was bigger for men voting for Donald Trump than women voting for Kamala Harris. And that's what drove this election for him. Across the board.
Ariva, what do you think about that gender gap?
That's so scary.
Well, I mean, it truly was, it almost was a battle of the sexes, if you will, more than anything.
And you know who loses in that battle? We do. We know that women are still underpaid. We know that women still have to work twice as hard to make the kind of revenue that men make. We know that women are still underrepresented in corporate America, in boardrooms, at top jobs in corporations. So the thought that white men in particular are going to be empowered for the next 4 years under a Donald Trump presidency, based on so many comments that he's made, the rhetoric that he's used, the rhetoric that J.D. Vance has used about women who don't have children, this is scary. This is really, really a scary time for women, and particularly women of color.
Michael, I will tell you one thing. To show you how hard it is there have been only 2 sitting vice presidents that have become president. George Herbert Walker Bush and Martin Van Buren. It is really, really difficult to go from the number 2 to the number 1. And proof positive, again, it didn't happen for Kamala Harris.
Well, voters tend to blame their frustrations on the party in power, whatever the party is. And that may have something to do with what we're seeing here.
Oh, the dissatisfaction with the Biden administration is 69, 70%.
And that trickles down. That, you know, it was very hard, it seemed, for the Harris campaign to distance herself. She did try, you know, many times during her rallies and her speeches and even her interviews to distance herself from the Biden administration. But then at the same time, it's still her boss, right?
Well, you know, that's so ironic that you say that. The Biden administration has been a great administration in so many respects. Donald Trump takes credit for an economy that Barack Obama will tell you he's responsible for. He'll tell you that he inherited a recession from George Bush when he came into office in 2008, and it was 75 months of positive growth under Barack Obama that Donald Trump takes credit for. The country has selective amnesia. They forgot about the chaos under the Trump administration. They forgot about the debacle and the handling of the pandemic under a Donald Trump administration. So much of what Donald Trump has taken credit for really wasn't things that he was responsible for. But obviously that message that Obama and Kamala Harris and other national surrogates spoke about so often during this campaign didn't resonate with voters in the same way that the vitriol and hatred, and I know we've been talking a lot about Donald Trump's message about the economy, but it's as if we're totally glossing over the vitriol and the hatred that Donald Trump spewed on the campaign trail each and every day. And the media, and I'm going to be critical of the media, has engaged in these false equivalencies of this candidate that has literally used profanity and has made the most vicious attacks against Liz Cheney, against Nancy Pelosi. All of that kind of just gets glossed over. And we say, well, he was good with the economy. But what about people's lives who feel threatened? What about the women, the voters, the two women in Georgia who worked as poll workers, and so many people who have been attacked because of the kind of divisiveness and hatred under Donald Trump? And I can't even imagine how we survive the next 4 years given the chaos in the White House created when he was president.
There is virtually nothing the electorate does not know about the former president. This appears to be an election about voter intensity, not necessarily who the voter is going to vote for, but how motivated they are to vote.
Yeah, I mean, look, Donald Trump drove his supporters to the polls. He drove infrequent supporters to the polls. I even think he drove people who didn't turn out in 2020 to the polls, which is, I mean, he ran a great campaign. Arriva may not like what he said and how he said it, but what he accomplished to do, if you look at that map out there, there's a heck of a lot more red than there is blue. And the states that Kamala Harris needed to win, it doesn't look like she's going to win any of them at this point.
Well, this isn't just about what Arriva likes or doesn't like. This is factual. Racist comments shouldn't be about what I like. It should be a country rejecting that. This is a country that says it stands for equality and equity for all. So when you have a president or a former president and his vice presidential candidate spewing that kind of hatred, I would think that all of Americans, not just Arriva, would be repulsed by that. So, Matt, I would think you have a wife, you have black clients. I know that because I know some of them. I think I would think you would be repulsed by what we've seen from Donald Trump. So it's kind of shocking to me that no one's repulsed by it but me.
And yet 65 million Americans voted for him today.
Well, 65 million Americans can vote for Donald Trump, and I would submit that a lot of that is supporting white supremacy and the white hierarchy created by Donald Trump. You can laugh at that, but
Okay.
I don't know, but you probably don't agree that there's racism in this country. But
don't put words in my mouth, please.
We can debate that too.
What do you think happened with the voter turnout for Kamala Harris? Where did she miss the mark? I mean, because it seemed like when it came to at least Pennsylvania, which was the big pie, the big one that you wanted to get, right? With big cities like Pittsburgh and Philadelphia, that she was good there, and that the outer, suburbs from those big cities were also hers, but it didn't turn out that way. What do you think happened?
Well, I don't think, and I don't necessarily agree that she missed the mark in any way. I think we need to see who the voters were in the state of Pennsylvania, in particular if we're talking about Pennsylvania, and who were those voters? Who were those voters that broke for Donald Trump? We're hearing from some of the exit polls that Latino voters broke for him in a way more significant than they had in the 2020 election. I'm very curious to see how white women voted in this election. They are always the focus of a lot of concern, a lot of intense focus on white suburban women. I'd be curious to see how they voted in this election. So I don't think Kamala Harris did anything but ran a first-rate campaign. So that's where I am on that issue.
All right, the debate continues.